Hi everybody out there in Horn Hangout land. Welcome back. It was only yesterday that I saw you, or the day before yesterday. Welcome back. It's Saturday in the Philharmonie and I have the most amazing guest for you guys today. She has been described as a cross between Madonna and Lulu's Berg. No, Berg's Lulu. Berg's Lulu. She's been described as a Hitchcock blonde with a voice like no other, and a woman from another planet. Now, you guys have to see for yourselves whether you agree with all that. I certainly do. Welcome, Barbara Hannigan.
Very happy to be here.
You're the first singer we've had on our show.
It's an honor. Yeah, it's an absolute honor. I'm thrilled. Yeah.
We're excited to have you. What are you doing back in Berlin?
I will be singing at the Staatsoper in a show in which I both sing and dance with the Sascha Waltz Company. It's an opera by Hosokawa called Matsukaze, and I play the role of Matsukaze.
Horn players will know about Hosokawa because Stefan Dor just played his horn concerto, which is really fantastic.
Heard, yeah.
But Stefan Dor didn't have to do the acrobatics that you had to do.
No, that's true. I begin at the top of the theater. I've got this kind of small little harness on with two very, very thin wires, and I fly in from the top of the theater with the singer Charlotte Hellekamp, who also plays my sister, and we fly in from the top, and it's very interesting because I always thought that I would be the kind of singer that would love to fly in these shows, you know, kind of Peter Pan stuff. But this is the second show that I've done where I had to do that, and it's absolutely nerve-wracking. I mean, it's really, really scary.
As if it wasn't hard enough to sing those notes.
Yeah, but the good thing is that I get over my fear of the singing because I basically just have fear of death for the entire first scene. So that works very well.
That might be something for Mr. Hosokawa to try for his second horn concerto.
Yeah, exactly.
For low horn, I hope. I want a low horn concerto, but I'm not sure about the flying part. Yeah. But you were just here.
Yes, I was. I was here in December for a very special program, a late night program with Simon Rattle, in which I sang a beautiful piece by Henze for 4 cellos and harp.
Being Beauteous.
Being Beauteous.
Fantastic piece.
Yeah.
It was your sort of requiem for him, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was, you know. I mean, and that poem by Rimbaud talks about transformation and metamorphosis and leaving your body. It was, I mean, we programmed it ages ago, and then it was very timely. And the second piece that we did was a crazy idea of Simon's to do Facade, which is for chamber ensemble, 2 narrators. And obviously you need a conductor. And so Simon had the amazing idea that when he was narrating, I would conduct the ensemble, and when I was narrating, he would conduct the ensemble. And you know, it was an incredible amount of fun.
If you haven't seen this yet, you guys, you've got to get on the Digital Concert Hall and watch Barbara and Simon doing Facade, because I couldn't go to the concert. I'd heard about how amazing it was. I'd seen the pictures of the dress.
Yeah.
But I hadn't been able to watch it. And last night at dinner, I just thought, okay, I was researching a little bit. I put it on. I sat there like this in front of the whole thing. Yeah. You have to watch it, if it's only just to see her hat.
Yeah, the hat and a strapless dress. And it was the first time I conducted in a strapless dress because the dress fit the piece. But then I thought, why not? Why not in future? Because then you're so free in your upper body for expression. I mean, like a dancer.
I don't know if Simon will agree with that. Let's put Simon in a strapless dress.
Yeah, maybe just for the girl.
Yeah. Now, you see, you're probably wondering what we're talking about. Barbara is actually an amazing conductor as well. And that's how Simon discovered you as a conductor. He knew you as a singer.
Yes.
He found you on YouTube, didn't he?
Yes. I mean, he knew that I had started conducting a few years ago, and when he asked me for Facade, he'd only heard about it, and then I guess he saw on YouTube that I was singing and conducting this incredible Ligeti piece, which he and I have actually done together many times, and on some occasions I eliminate the middleman and I just do everything myself, because I'm a woman and I'm good at multitasking, and so I did that, and then he saw it and he was a bit flabbergasted. I think it is kind of a crazy.
So are you an amazing singer who's going to turn into a conductor, or are you going to offer yourself, like I saw on your website, you're like the whole concert in some places. You're singing and conducting. Like we know this from the violin, from the piano.
Right. But in fact, wouldn't it be easier as a singer? Because when you're a violinist and when you're a pianist, you actually have to use your hands to do that. When you're a singer, you're free. So it seems to me kind of a no-brainer if one, you know, musician is going to conduct and do their instrument at the same time, it would make sense that it would be the singer. You know, the conducting is an expansion for me. That's how I think about it. It's just an expansion of my musicianship. I don't have plans to take over the world as a conductor. It's just something that I love to do, and that seems to work with particular programs that I'm building with orchestras. That sometimes I just do everything.
Are there any other singers that are doing this? Is there any? Yeah.
Natalie Stutzman.
Ah,
Natalie Stutzman
really?
is doing it. Yeah.
Good for her.
Yeah, she's fantastic. Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. I would actually like to show the viewers the first time, if I can get this going, I'm going to look. We've got Stefan here on his knees in the camera. I'm going to try and show you guys this. Have you got this,
That's
Stefan?
the New Year's
Oh, that's the New Year's
yeah.
Eve, and that's the wrong one. We're getting quite technical here. This is the first time. This is the first time it wasn't the first time I'd experienced Barbara, but this is a time where I just sat up and thought, this woman is unbelievable on stage. She'd done the dress rehearsal for the Ligeti piece, the Macabre, and she turns up on stage in the evening, and my colleagues and I were so amazed we could hardly play. And this is what she looked like when she came on stage. Ah, I've lost it. No, there we go, there we go, there we go. Here we go. Right.
Wow.
Right. You got this, Stefan?
Yes.
Okay. We got a few minutes of Albrecht Meyer first and Emmanuel Pahu, but that's okay with you guys.
That's all right.
That's fine. Here she comes.
This is a trilling.
Just look at that.
I'm trilling along with Emmanuel.
Well, okay. There's old Simon trying to keep his concentration. So
It is.
So that was the first time I saw Barbara in these black clothes. Unfortunately, you didn't wear them today.
In my outfit, no.
Bit of a shame, really.
I don't bring it everywhere I go. It's hard to get through customs.
And the first questions come in.
Oh, yeah, okay.
From an Aussie horn. I wonder who that could be. How did you prepare for your performance of Ligeti's Mysteries of the Macabre?
Yeah, that's a good question. You know what? I learned that piece. It's a 7-minute real tour de force. I learned it like a Mozart concert aria. Very slowly, very, very carefully, incredibly disciplined attention to, believe it or not, making the most beautiful tone that I could with the most disciplined technique that I could. And I'm so glad I did, because I can wake up any morning, more or less, and sing that piece. It's in my body, it's in my head, it's completely incorporated in what I think is the most healthy way to perform it.
What note is that up there?
That's a trill on a high B that changes to a B to a C, and then it changes to a C sharp at
That's
the
something
end.
for you to practice at home. I
Yeah,
think.
trilling.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, I think all the repertoire that I prepare, I try to do it in a very disciplined way. And people often ask me, you know, is your technique different for the contemporary repertoire and the classical repertoire? And I say absolutely not. It's always the same. It's bel canto is bel canto.
Yeah. Yeah. I would love to do, well, we have to do like a 3-hour interview, because about all the things, the crazy things you've done, and the wonderful videos and all the rest of it. But I promised our horn viewers that we would talk about performance techniques, performance skills, and music communication, because it's something that's very important to you. You're an incredibly flamboyant musician. You know, it doesn't matter what you're doing, whether it's facade or whether it's mystery or whether you're singing. I've heard you doing some lieder as well. I mean, it doesn't matter what you do. You put your heart and your soul into it.
I think that's, for me, the core really is listening, and that I'm listening very, very deeply to my colleagues at all times, to the whole sound world. Not particularly to myself, because I'm making the sound. And if I start listening to myself, then I'm going to get behind. But it's listening to the sound world in which I'm living at this moment. And I think that very, very deep concentration is actually introverted. And what I try to allow is for the audience to be able to come in to our world. I don't try to go out to them. And it's interesting because you said the word flamboyant, and I hear that sometimes, you know, that they think that people see kind of an outward thing, but in fact what I am feeling is the inward feeling, going into the music, inviting the audience in.
That's why we maybe see this flamboyant, because we feel invited in.
Yeah, that you come in, and you do see, I mean, you know, this very deep listening and this very deep concentration leaves a person in a state of vulnerability. And I think even though that's difficult to do day in and day out, it for me is the only way. And secondly, it's touching and it's moving for the public, because I don't think if I close off some part of myself to try and protect, you know, from nerves or whatever it is.
That's a very, very good point. Closing off part of yourself. And I speak, unfortunately, self-experience that I find when I'm feeling nervous or worried, it can be a sold-out hall, but there's one person in that hall that's important, whose opinion is important to me, and I close down sometimes. That's a very, very good point. How can we avoid that? Because I know you've worked a lot with sports psychologists. And
well, trying to, I mean, for me, the listening is key. So whenever I get nervous, I try to listen even more deeply. Secondly, realizing that with every breath, and this is the same for horn, or actually the same for any instrument, whether it's a wind-powered instrument or not, that with every breath, we have a completely new chance for renewal. And that's a great gift to remember, because when you're singing or when you're playing the horn and you may feel shaky on a line, or you may feel insecure, realizing that you can ground yourself with the very next breath. And everything begins again.
Do singers, I've always wanted to know this. I mean, I've talked to some singers about this, but it would be great to get your opinion on this. Now, when you take a breath to ground yourself, does it go in here? Does it go in here? Does it go in here?
So it's both nose and mouth. The rib cage, for me, if I'm in good form, the rib cage is basically constantly expanded. So I'm not doing.
So you don't do what we do.
No.
Okay.
I may apply a bit of pressure on the sides to expand even more, but I ignore the rib cage and I go much lower, and the breath. So here's the diaphragm, right? But the diaphragm is really only also for support. So I'm below the diaphragm.
So your air is going in very low.
Yeah, very low. And the release and intake of breath is all the support is basically below the navel.
I've often wondered that, because we sit behind the singers obviously all the time, and I've watched great tenors, especially the men. The girls, you sometimes can't quite tell if they're wearing sort of strange dresses, but with you can see what's going on.
Yeah, pretty well see it.
But I don't see this expansion that if I'm sitting behind like Stefan or one of my colleagues, I see them doing this, literally like bellows, you know. So I see them doing that, and I don't see that so much in singers.
No, well, I think, see, the rib cage, as far as I'm concerned, is for like the little bit of extra contingency breath. Yeah. So when it's always full, you've always got a little bit of reserve. But the lower breathing is the real support, and the diaphragm, which goes all the way around the back, of course. So that leaning on the lower, you know, it's called, I think dancers call it pelvic floor breathing or yoga. It's like yoga breathing. It's very similar. And then keeping the nasal passages and the mouth open, so you're getting air kind of from both. I never do just through the nose, because that closes off.
Okay, it's interesting. It really is quite different to what we do. Everyone has their own breathing technique. I mean, I use a lot of upper body because I don't have a very big lung capacity.
Okay.
And I sit next to guys that do.
Right.
So, and nobody's really interested if you have in your lung capacity when you're doing the job. So the lungs are here, so I do use a lot of that. But I've always wondered, and we were getting. I could talk about this for hours.
Me too. Yeah. But I think this is also interesting for listeners that are musicians.
Yeah.
You know?
But also, you singers take a breath, and then it's all out there. We take a breath, and we have to.
Yeah.
You know, it sort of goes out through this tiny little hole of the mouthpiece.
Yeah. And I would like to introduce the concept of not taking a breath, but basically you expel the breath, right? And then you allow the breath to come in. So your analogy to the bellows, so that if you exhale, the bellows are going to refill naturally.
Yeah.
So psychologically, the idea of actually not taking a breath, because then I can end up, especially under stressful situations, which is pretty well every performance, I can end up gasping or trying to suck the air in instead of just allowing the bellows to open and the air comes in.
Good point. Great. No, that's great. I'm going to be writing all this down. I hope everyone else is. Rodri from the UK. Hi, Rodri. Rodri, you can tell me that later. When he saw the Berlin Phil last year, he could see Stefan's expansion from the opposite end of the Albert Hall.
I've watched some of his. It's pretty
very true.
Yeah, his rib. I saw it was on your Old Lang Syne.
Oh yes.
He was saying just his rib cage is just.
Yeah. Well, mine is too, but I don't wear the skin tight things.
Right. Yeah.
No, our bodies have to work a lot, but I mean yours do too, and you're standing on stage for hours and hours. Do you think with the nerves? I mean, we're jumping around all sorts of things here, but the nerves. I was thinking last night, is it an advantage or a disadvantage not to have an instrument in your hands? Can you, when you get nervous? When I get nervous, for example. I had to do something at the Queen Elizabeth Hall with the 12 cellos, and I was just announcing it and talking about it. I had no horn in my hand.
Right.
So I was backstage for the concert doing this.
Yeah, because you're used to having
they were all
that.
warming up. And I was like, where's my horn? And I didn't have it.
Yeah.
And you are just in your bodies. You know, is that an advantage or a disadvantage?
Well, I mean, I used to play oboe and I play the piano, so I do know what it feels like to have the instrument. I have to say, in concert work, not in opera, because in opera you have a costume, and that is kind of the barrier. But in concert work, I do feel quite vulnerable. And it depends kind of how big the ensemble is. Normally, the bigger the ensemble, the more safe I feel. But if it's the intimacy of a recital, I mean, I feel incredibly exposed. And I do a lot of my repertoire from memory, so I don't even have the music stand, and when I do have a music stand, I'm going to hold on to it,
Do you hold on to the piano?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, the other night I had a show in London, and at the beginning, I was incredibly nervous, and I don't think the audience could tell, but just inside, I was so overwhelmed.
It's so hard to believe. I mean, there are people who know you and watch you, and you just have so much fun with what you do. It's really hard to believe that there's this inner turmoil going on. But I'm really happy that you're able to admit it as well. Because,
absolutely, yeah. No, it's definitely a very big part of my performing, and dealing with that has become a big part of my life because I love making music. I don't want to give it up, and I have to somehow deal with performance anxiety, and I've sorted it out as best I can, but it's kind of an ongoing thing. But when I came out on stage in London, I just put my hand on the inside of the piano and I just held on to that for dear life and tried to let the rest of my body be relaxed, because I just needed some kind of anchor.
It's that fight or flight mode that kicks in.
And what are you going to do? You can't run off stage. I had to stay and fight. I had to fight for the sound.
Yeah. When you played the oboe, in fact, I was just about to ask you that, and a great question came in from Jeffrey Johnson. He plugged us on his Sonic Labyrinth blog, so thank you for that, Jeff. Barbara has the rhythmic sense of an instrumentalist. I totally agree with that. Can you tell us more about the instrumental training in your background?
Sure. Yeah. So from a very early age, I think age 4 or 5, I was studying piano. From age 9 or 10, I was studying oboe. And then singing in choirs and in school music and so on was always a big part of my life. But when I went to university, I went to the University of Toronto, and we had all these incredible world music programs, and I was in the African drumming ensemble. I was always hanging out with a percussionist anyway. And
they are the coolest, I must admit.
Yeah, they're very cool. And anyway, I was in the African drumming ensemble, and so every week, or maybe even twice, I think it's Thursdays.
I can actually imagine that.
Yeah, I was in that, and it really did. If you have to be part of a rhythm section, then you really do start to incorporate that more in your body. And
then the oboe.
Yeah, the oboe. It wasn't really my instrument, and at first, I came from this very small village in Nova Scotia, on the East Coast, and I was kind of trying to figure out how to play the oboe by myself. We had a music teacher who could play you know, everything, but wasn't a specialist in that instrument. He was actually a specialist in euphonium, French horn. And so, I mean, it's not really one of those instruments you want to kind of figure out on
It's sort of like the opposite for the singer than to singing, because, you know, in an oboe you take the air.
Yeah, it's
and
pretty
the singer
compressed.
just takes it in and lets it all out.
Yeah, but there is an element of compression as well in the singing. There is compression. We can't, it's a matter of gauging how much you need. And of course, you usually need more for the soft singing than you do for the loud, which is interesting.
How do you gauge that? I'm just interested because we have to gauge as well. We have speed of air,
Yeah.
you know, loud, soft.
Yeah.
But we do it through the mouthpiece and through our support.
Yeah, we do it with our support. I mean, it's a lot of trial and error. And I think I was thinking about it the other day. I was thinking about sustaining a tone. How do we do that? And how did we learn to do that? Because anybody can, well, hopefully most people can sing along with the radio, but what we're doing is, in our repertoire, is different than that. And how did we learn to do that? And to be honest, I didn't really have the answer, but I think it's the mix of all those awarenesses, you know. I mean, also in singing, we have the entire, this unit. We have the tongue, we have the palate, we have the
Which is
jaw.
the same for a wind instrument as well.
Yeah, and I mean, I always think of it like I'm a car, and everything has to learn to do its own job. And nobody can take over somebody else's job, right? I mean, the tongue cannot take over the responsibility of the breath. And when they start getting mixed up in their jobs, then we run into trouble, you know.
There's a friend of mine
There's
a friend of mine on the chat who is a percussionist and was quite happy that I said percussion's are the cool one, Tom, and he's just described, he thinks oboe playing is like blowing into a weasel. So thank you for that, Tom. That's why you just turned to singing.
Yeah.
No, there is so much similarity. But can I get back to we jump around according to what's coming in on the chat. Back to your London performance.
Yeah.
I don't mean to sort of tell any state secrets here, but I'm fascinated about this fight and flight, because we all go through that. All musicians have this, and we've had a question. How Jenna from London has asked, do the nerves ever go away? I'm glad you're answering that and not me.
Well, I'm sorry to say, actually, I don't think they do.
No.
And I think sometimes we're better able to deal with it at other times. Certainly when we're in a really tight schedule, or if circumstances didn't go exactly the way we wanted, it can be worse. And when everything's gone the way we wanted it, and we feel more safe, you know, in the days before, and we had a good sleep and we had a good meal and we don't have a cold and all those things, you can feel more confident. But I mean, you know, for me, for example, singing a recital is very difficult, and singing in London is difficult.
Why is it difficult?
Well, it may be because I'm a Canadian, and I feel like a colonist. You know?
In London?
Yeah, I do. I feel intimidated by England. And
you be intimidated by England, my dear. We're so unintimidated.
But it may be because, you know, I come from this very small place. I didn't grow up in a big classical music tradition, and there is a little bit of a feeling of inferiority. And when I walked out on that stage in London, I'd had really good preparatory rehearsals. I was looking forward to it. It's an incredible program, but it was also a program in which I had to really turn myself inside out. You know, Schoenberg, Berg, and the Schoenberg String Quartet, Alma Mahler Lieder. Everything is about Sehnsucht. Everything's about longing, and it's this really internal passion. And if I was going to really do it properly, then I had to get in quite a vulnerable position. And I walked out there and my mouth was really dry. And
that happens to us too.
Yeah, it was horrible. It was so dry I couldn't even swallow, you know, it just didn't even matter.
Can you imagine it going into a mouthpiece when your mouth is that dry? It's a nightmare.
Yeah. I mean, usually the nerves they hit us hardest where we can't bear it, you know, so the breath and the dry mouth. And I felt really kind of overwhelmed. And, you know, I think sometimes when we get nervous, that dialogue starts. And
sometimes.
Yeah, okay, all the time. But one thing that I've trained myself is to be aware of that dialogue starting to talk, starting to talk at you and saying, oh, you don't have enough breath, or you're not going to make it through this line, or that note was shaky, or whatever. And I'm much better now at just allowing that dialogue to pass by and to not engage with it.
How did you train that? Because we had a fantastic hangout with Dinka.
I saw that.
You saw that.
I loved that. Yeah.
She was great.
Yeah, she's amazing. Great. I trained it out with sports psychology books.
Like what? Are there any?
There's one called Mindset.
Mindset.
Yeah, it's by Jackie Reardon and Hans Deckers. It's a tennis book.
Can someone look that up for us? And I'm writing it in the chat so if anyone wants to, because I want to order it later.
Yeah, it's very, very good. It's published both in Dutch and in English. It's a tennis book. Yeah. It has very simple methods, which I like because the simpler the better, especially when you're under stress. I also read Don Green's books on performance nerves, or whatever he calls them. I forget.
Anxiety.
Performance anxiety. And I think his book is called Performance Success.
Yeah.
But the thing I liked about Mindset is that it also has something to do with meditation, that awareness of the negative dialogue and just allowing it to pass and not going into conversation with it.
It's very destructive.
It's pretty destructive, yeah.
But it's
and
like
to keep it out of your life in general is a good idea.
That's true. That's very true. But it's like the brain is two halves, isn't it? There's the one practical side that stops at a red light without thinking about it, and the other side that's telling you all these terrible things that, it would be a very good thing for life as well as for horn playing and singers.
Really to try and turn that off at all times, because I never go into what if dialogue. I never do. I've trained that out of myself.
I want to train this. We want to train this.
By recognizing, by labeling it, by seeing, okay, I've just asked, what if I don't, let's say 15 years ago I asked, what if I crack the high C, right? Then what you've done is you've allowed the mind to entertain that possibility, and it's gone there and it's created that situation, and it can hear it and it can feel it. So I don't allow myself to think, what if I crack that high C?
If you feel a what if coming, because horn players don't like to crack high Cs either.
I don't even have them anymore. At least.
High Cs?
No. I hope I have the high Cs. I had one 2 nights ago. But I don't allow the mental possibility, the dialogue of what if into my mind anymore.
Yeah.
Just doesn't come in. So I still get nervous, and I have plenty of things to get nervous about, but that particular aspect of dialogue isn't there. The other thing I'm really crazy about is mistake recovery. Because when you make a mistake, I love it. In fact, I kind of even like it when I make a mistake, because then I can do my recovery thing. So when you make a mistake, if say you're on an airplane and you're at cruising altitude, right? And you make a mistake, so you drop, right? And what happens is sometimes when we make the mistake, we do 2 things. Number one, we start thinking about it while we're still singing, making music. We start thinking, oh, what just happened? How? I screwed up that word, or I sang the wrong note, or da-da-da-da, or the rhythm was early. And you get into this whole dialogue about the mistake, which is pretty well guaranteeing that you're going to make another mistake because you're not focused anymore.
Of course.
Secondly, the other thing that we try to do is that after we drop in the mistake from the cruising altitude, we immediately try to go back up again instead of gradually working our way up. Right? And I love the concept of, okay, make a mistake, acknowledge, deal with it later, and now we will regain cruising altitude.
Fantastic advice.
It's so fun because when you realize that happened the other night, I said Wilden, or I started with a V instead of a Z or something.
Shame on you.
Yeah, I know, it was crazy.
Shame on you.
And I noticed that happened. And I thought, deal with it later. And then I immediately recovered. Otherwise, I would have forgotten the next words. I know that's what would have happened. And I just didn't get into a dialogue with that. I thought, sort it out later in the dressing room or tomorrow morning with the music.
It's like not bashing yourself as well.
Yeah.
Because I must admit, when something goes wrong with me, I think, oh God, why did you do that? And that's very, very good advice.
Well, the other thing is...
No more trying to immediately jump, but to cruise up to altitude again.
And the other thing in this Mindset book, which is kind of exactly about what you just said.
The link already. The New Psychology of Success.
Oh, okay.
So we've got really fit hangout fans out there. Thanks, Nick.
Is friendly eyes. This is a concept from Mindset, because you said just now, oh, why did you do that?
Yeah.
Or that was so stupid
Yeah.
or something. Now, you would never talk to a friend of yours like that,
No.
ever, right? You would never criticize a colleague like that.
No.
You would say these things happen,
Of
or
course,
don't worry
of
about it,
course.
we're all human, da, da, da.
Yeah.
And so the concept of friendly eyes towards yourself and towards your colleagues allows for you to remain in a compassionate state. And I mean, we can be so critical, but why should we be so critical about ourselves? Because there's so many critics out there anyway. It's enough, right? So for us to add our voice to the mix and be even tougher on ourselves than others is really quite a mean thing to do to ourselves. So this concept helped me a lot from mindset about friendly eyes, about treating yourself like you would treat a friend, with compassion and constructive criticism instead of destructive criticism. And that, you know what, I still get really nervous, and it's still hard.
But getting nervous is not what people say. You need the nerves to be able to perform great. I'm not quite sure that I agree with that, because I could really do without all this pain and suffering.
Yeah.
But these things are really fantastic tips, and I'm gonna use them. The cruising back up to altitude, friendly eyes, because you're right. We don't go to colleagues and say you really shouldn't. You're a total idiot.
Wow.
Yeah.
No, do that.
We wouldn't. So why do we treat ourselves like that?
Yeah. And I mean, I think on the other hand, once you reach a certain level as a performer, it's hard to get really honest feedback, and you need to surround yourself with what I call my team, and that may be, you know,
like my wonderful team here.
Yeah, like your team here. I mean, but I have my team of you know, singing teacher or teachers, coach, my management, my friends, my colleagues that I really trust, who I hope can be really honestly critical of me, and I myself am honestly critical, but in a way that I hope is helping me and not in a destructive way.
That's fantastic. I'd like to say amen at the end of that. There's two mental guides. There's Mindset, The New Psychology of Success. There's another one, Mindset, Mental Guide, Jackie Reardon. That's it. They're both the same.
Jackie Reardon,
Okay. This one says Carol Dweck. Anyway,
well, this is
Jackie Reardon is the
Reardon.
one.
Yeah,
okay,
that's the one I know.
John in Chicago's just asked, what do you do if things do go wrong on stage, if they ever do? Well, I guess you just
keep
question.
you take the next breath. You recover. You try to recover, and you keep going. I mean, I can't run away.
Yeah.
I can only do the best I can. I can accept that I'm human, and you know, I mean, I don't. You know, you said dry mouth can be really bad. I mean, for a singer, even just having a very slight cold, or even dealing with air conditioning for 6 hours, or an overheated or dry room, all those things can affect our instrument a lot. And so, you know, just to be doing the best that I can.
And I would just like to repeat that thing, what you said about the breathing, because that is one of the most fantastic things you said for us horn players today. With every new breath, you have a chance.
New start.
For a new start.
Completely new start. Yeah. You can ground, you can root yourself, you know, mentally as well as musically and physically. Everything can begin again with that new breath.
Because sometimes I find when I'm nervous, that the breath is, of course, the one thing, it hits you where you need it most. So what would be your advice on keeping yourself calm enough to actually think about breathing properly? Because
you go up, right? And
you guys do that too.
Yeah, we go up. Yeah. And then when this gets tight, I mean, if anybody's doing this at home, then you feel it. This whole part of the instrument gets tight. And you can't really get a deep breath. I mean, breathing exercises, you know, I mean, before I even warm up, I start doing breathing exercises like dancers do tendus, right? It's just part of training the instrument.
This lady is the most talented person. She's a trained dancer as well as being a conductor and a singer, an ex-oboe player and an African drummer. Just to add to the long list of your talents, you're a trained dancer.
I'm a professional breather. So everyone thinks I'm a trained dancer.
Well, that's what it says in the...
I know, I've seen that in the press a lot. But look, I have danced in shows. I have had some...
What sort of shows?
Sasha Waltz shows, or in Lulu I was on point for the whole first act, and then most of the third act. So I was on point shoes. So, but I didn't train for that particularly. I never actually had ballet training. I had modern dance training, not a whole lot. I mean, I never was planning to be a dancer, but I mean, it helps the singing.
course.
It absolutely helps singing. I took dance lessons because I wanted to become a better mover on stage.
Speaking of Lulu, you wrote on your Facebook page you can't bear to say goodbye to her.
Yeah.
Was that your first run of Lulu at the Monet?
Yeah, it was my first run.
You loved it, didn't you?
Yeah, she really took me over. I mean,
Oh dear.
Yeah, no, but it was extraordinary because it's a 3.5-hour role.
Yeah.
It's something that you prepare, you actually prepare the role for a year or more, but you prepare your entire life for being able to handle such a massive undertaking, psychologically, emotionally, physically, musically. I mean, in every way. Lulu kind of eats you up.
You did the 3-act version.
We did the 3-act version.
Long piece.
Heavy. And every morning I woke up with that in my head, and I went to sleep with it in my head. And it was like, in a way, it was like she was my lover, and I was absolutely, just like all the men in the show, I also was in love with Lulu. And then when it was over, I immediately went on, literally the next morning, I went on to my next engagement. And I missed her so much that there was a kind of mourning for
That's
that.
what it sounded like on this.
It really was. I still miss it.
Yeah.
I really, it's getting
I'm
better.
sure you're going to be doing Lulu a lot in your career.
Yeah, probably. But, we're booked so far in advance that it's hard to manage to find an opportunity as soon as I want,
Yeah. What was that bear doing on the stage? I saw
The
a picture of
bear.
this great big bear.
Yeah,
on the
there was a
stage.
bear, there was a lion, there's a crocodile. It starts with me with my head inside a crocodile. They were part of kind of the menagerie. There's an animal trainer at the beginning of the show, and he's talking about the circus, and he's talking about the menagerie, and that's why the bear
It was an impressive bear.
Yeah. It was good.
Did you find that really getting into the character, that is another really important part? I mean, we horn players or we brass players don't have pieces like Lulu that we get to play, but just trying to get into the music is obviously a thing we all try and do.
Yeah.
For a singer, it must be a dream to have these roles you can really lose yourself
It was.
in.
And I really didn't get nervous for Lulu at all.
You had no time with all that text
I didn't have
and
time.
notes. And...
Yeah, but even before the show, the day of the show, I just felt like, okay, now I'm going to eat, and I would be really regimented exactly what I would eat before the show, and have the food in the dressing room for between acts while they're changing the wig and makeup. And it was like almost like a ritual to sing that piece.
It's like a sports person preparing for this. I mean, we always have our interval bananas in the horn room at the Philharmonie. And
singers have apples because they hydrate the mouth very well, better than water.
Really?
Yeah, so if you have dry mouth, take a bite of an apple. It's better than water. Yeah.
That's a good tip.
Yeah.
Apples instead of water. One teacher told me once to put some lemon juice on my hand, and if I was nervous, then to just lick my hand. That didn't really work for me. But apples, I've learned this now, this late.
Yeah.
And there's a really great question that's coming from Campbell. It said, what are your thoughts about the impact of body language, looking confident on stage or so, on your actual performance? And that has to do with Lulu, obviously, in all your performances.
Yeah. Well, I think, that's true. I mean, the reason why I go to great lengths to hide how nervous I am is because the audience has not come to the concert to see how nervous is she about this program. They have come to lose themselves in the experience of concentrated music making. And so from a very early age, I was always hiding how nervous I was because I don't feel it's fair to the public. So you establish a certain body language, and I think over time, I've become more comfortable with showing the public not, really my natural poise, and being flexible with that. Maybe because of the dance training, to not be rigid in that, especially in concert work. In opera, you're moving all over the place, you're hanging upside down, whatever. That's different. But in concert work, I don't need to be rigid in front of the orchestra. I need to be fluid because then the breath moves. As soon as the knees lock, we're holding our breath somewhere. As soon as the hip joints lock, we're also holding breath.
So walking out on stage, I mean, from the Philharmonie, it's quite a long way onto the stage there.
Yeah.
We watch people come out there for auditions, and often by the time they get onto the stage, you've seen their body literally do that.
Oh, God.
It sort of collapses in on themselves.
Yeah.
And I always tell my students to sort of try and, just sort of flex their shoulder blades.
And to open
Are there
out.
to open out? Are there any good tricks for us mere mortals that have to do auditions and hideous things like that. Sometimes I think if you can trick your body into feeling good, then you do perform better.
Well, yeah,
even
I
if
mean,
you're terrified.
yes, I think posture. I mean, I often, when I'm teaching younger singers or doing master classes, I talk about, especially for the women, I talk about walking in a way that they feel is a bit macho. You know, leading from the sternum, allowing the chest cavity to be expanded at all times, having the friendly eyes. I mean, that all gives a sense of physical confidence, and it fools the body into forgetting about some percentage of the nerves. Yeah, to really, this kind of male football player walk I talk about, you know, that where you really own the room.
Yeah. It's hard to do that if you're nervous about it beforehand. But if we use all these techniques, then then we might not be nervous. We're going to use the friendly eyes and the not saying what if. That's a very, very good point.
Yeah, just not going there.
Yeah.
Just letting it pass by like a film. You know, or like you're on a train and you go past all this scenery, and that just goes by.
You do have to deal with it afterwards, though, because on a horn, if you split 100 notes, then you've really, you can't ignore all of them.
That's right.
Got to deal with them afterwards.
Right. You need to very carefully go and you know, deconstruct what your performance was, what went wrong, and why it went wrong, and address those things. But on stage is not the moment to address any of those. Yeah.
Fantastic tips. I mean, really, the chat is actually quite quiet today, and I'm not sure actually, you guys, is because there's not so many of you out there, which I can't believe, or whether you really, no, not at all, whether you really don't have that many questions for us, because if you do have some questions, write them in now. We're going to have to wrap up in a bit, and if not, we're just going to get you back, and as often as you can come back, because this performance thing is something that is sometimes when we sit in practice rooms and practice for hours and hours, we get the technical stuff down, but then a horn player or whoever it is, an instrumental player, will come out on stage. And in America, the auditions are behind a screen. Here in our orchestra, for example, they're not. So we really look at the person and we see what their body language is telling us. And it's really important. And I think this thing just isn't taught enough.
Well, I think the other thing that I've heard a lot is that when people go out for auditions and the audition panelists start making notes or talking to each other, right? And then a lot of people who are doing their audition, they start to try and imagine what the panelists are writing or saying, which first of all takes them completely out of what they're supposed to be doing, which is making the sound. And secondly, they often, I think 9 times out of 10, if they start imagining that, they start imagining negative things, which is completely unhelpful. So I think the first thing is to reassure yourself of the possibility that they may be writing down, I have never heard this phrase played more beautifully, for example, or what incredible breath control, or lovely
might just
presence.
be a shopping list.
Could be. And so to really, that's also part of the auditioning process that I think can be really difficult, is dealing with those people that are sitting out in the hall and their reactions, and to try not to get into yet another dialogue with what you imagine might be how they are reacting to
that's sort of a mental thing, and that's really good, because I've been there, done that, seen them talk these days with the iPhone. You see the light of people, But what about for the body? Is there anything? Is there any tip you have for the body that can? I use the shoulder blades back.
Yeah, that's good. I like that. I think in general, physical fitness does help a lot, because it gets your, endorphins, I guess, happy, and makes you happy. Makes you, reduces stress.
Make me that happy.
Yeah, I
do it because I have to, but it doesn't make me happy.
But I mean, getting outside and walking or running or going to the gym or dancing or whatever it is, but some kind of physical exertion of the body does relieve stress. And I think also for me, having some kind of regimen and being disciplined makes me more calm.
Yeah,
it does make me more calm. Yeah.
Maggie's asked, is stagecraft different for women and for men? I think probably a reaction to your football player's walk.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I can't speak for men, but I think, as far as I'm concerned, I'm just trying to be myself and be the sound. And those are the two things that I really need to be in concert. And as far as in opera, Then I'm the character. I'm the music and the character.
Yeah.
That's it, really. Yeah.
Fantastic tips for all musicians, not just for horn players. Jeffrey Johnson just wanted to ask, who are the singers from the last generations who you were most inspired by?
Wow. Well, I would have to say Maria Callas, and I like that she's, well, I think everyone is flawed, but she kind of put it all out there, and that moved me very much. I mean, different singers for different things, you know. Montserrat Caballé, extraordinary technique. John Vickers, wonderful Canadian tenor. Oh, there's this video of him singing Wagner, and he's just standing on a podium in his tuxedo, and he's just singing, and he's just so incredibly grounded. And he's also from this tiny place in Canada, and became one of the best.
Where your dad is watching from.
My dad might be watching. Hi, Dad, if you're there. From Nova Scotia, yeah. So that would be 5 hours before here.
Oh,
yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Perfect time of the morning.
Yeah.
Perfect time of the morning. Now, because we're saying we're just about to finish, now the questions are coming in. I'm not sure whether the chat is being a little bit slow, but Blake has asked if we go back to the questions just quickly, and then we'll wrap up. Do you imagine the audience use a visualization while you practiced and prepare for a performance?
No, I don't.
No.
I don't do that at all. I visualize how I will feel.
Yeah.
I visualize walking on stage. I visualize really very, very specifically how I will feel with every phrase and every breath. But I don't visualize the audience.
No. I'm trying to. We see them.
We see them enough.
You can't really do it with
and
your
then,
eyes
of course,
closed.
you see somebody you know.
Yeah.
You know, and then, you know, that's a whole different world. You know,
we have to try and keep that down. You have done some amazingly cool things. And I think that is one, you impress me so much as a musician, not just as a singer, because you try these new things. You know, you've made these little videos about toothpaste. There's some films for people.
Films,
you've oh, hang on, someone, before I start my laudatio, which I'm going to do because I have another video of Barbara that I want to show you guys. The questions are coming in. Jeremy, Barbara, could you show us a few examples of breathing exercises to do before you go on stage?
Yeah.
Maybe that's good for us horns too.
Yeah, well.
Only if everybody at home, if you all
if you're doing
promise to do it with us.
Well, I would say first allow the chest to be expanded, right? So now you're just allowing that. And to really just stay there.
How do you allow the chest to be expanded?
Yeah, and stay there and try not to collapse.
Okay.
You know? So that means that we're
chest expanded
tall.
Means also having taken a breath.
Yeah.
No?
Yeah, well, there's breath, there's
Okay.
air in there.
Mm-hmm.
You just trust that there's air in your system because you haven't fainted. And the sternum is leading, right? Mm-hmm. And then if we do an exhale on let's say, and when we finish, we're just going to allow the air to come back in. So if I exhale, and the air is back in, and that was it.
And that wasn't any sort of fake, not fake,
I
but
didn't
body,
draw the air in.
Draw it.
And I allowed myself at the end of the breath,
Yeah.
if I do it quickly,
Okay.
at the end of the breath, I allow myself to be open. So this is open, this is open. And the air is going to come in really low.
It's very hard for me not to go.
Yeah.
Because that's what we
Right.
what we try and do, but
Well,
that's just being. That's literally just
Yeah,
being. Just letting
and
the
of
body
course,
go.
under performance, see, this is ideal circumstances.
Yeah.
We do these exercises because we might manage 70% of that in performance.
Mhm.
Of course, under stress of performance, I'm going to take a breath.
Mhm.
I'm not going to just allow the breath to come in, but once in a while, maybe I can.
Yeah.
And that would be just
Yeah.
fantastic.
But would you have enough breath to sing with a you would?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. You're a singer. How does
Yeah, but
go.
I mean, I'm not,
Yeah.
you know, as I said, we're all flawed, and that's beautiful that we're all flawed.
Yeah.
And no performance, I think, under our own, you know, critical eye is perfect.
Mhm.
And that's probably the beauty of live music making, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's great to do all this online. This is the first time you've done a live
I love
online
it.
hangout. Of course, nothing can beat a live concert. So, you know, but for people that don't have access to you, or are really happy to see you live online. And there are so many great videos of you on your YouTube channel and stuff. There's, as I said, there's these
the ligeti.
These funny, the ligeti. There's also the ligeti of you conducting, which I could not believe.
Yeah, that was kind of funny to conduct and sing it at the same time. I do that pretty regularly now.
Unbelievable. Yeah. And then, is there anything from this fantastic opera you did in the summer, right?
Oh, Written on Skin.
George Benjamin, is there anything? I didn't find it.
It was on Arte and Medici TV. I don't know if it's still on. We're at Covent Garden with that in March.
Did George write that part for you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Amazing.
And every time I had struggles with it like any part, and all he would say was, I wrote it for you, darling. I wrote it for you. He's forced me to,
And there's another thing I just wanted to show you guys, because this was one of the coolest things. This was like true pop star status.
Oh yeah, my pop star moment. Yeah.
Stefan, can you come in here and see if you can get this? This is Barbara ringing in 2011. You stood on stage outside in the freezing cold.
It was really cold.
In Amsterdam.
Yeah.
And look what she did. Look at that dress!
Singing Nessun Dorma.
Okay, wait for it. Here we go. Atta girl! Atta girl!
Oh my God!
That is just amazing. That is incredible.
Freezing. It was freezing out there.
That is just amazing, and it was freezing. All these people saying Happy New Year, and you're singing Nessun Dorma in the most amazing Madonna dress.
Yeah.
The only thing that are missing are these pointy, whatever.
Yeah.
Incredible. Barbara, you've done so much, and your career is just incredible, and you've helped us. I mean, I've got all these things I've written down. I've taken notes while you've been speaking, and I'm sure it's going to be a great addition to our archive.
Well, I hope so. I mean, I love your archive. I watch all those shows.
Thank you.
So I'm really happy that
We'd love to have you back. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Sarah.
Guys, that was Barbara. She is incredible. Thank you so much for joining us. And we'll see you in a few more weeks for some new hangouts. We've got them planned. Fergus McWilliam is coming on. We have the second of our Alexander films made at Alexander Mainz about how to look after your horn, which was a fun film to make. And another hangout, which we're not announcing just quite yet. So keep a lookout on the webpage. And we'll see you very, very soon. Thanks so much for joining us. Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you.
Thank you.